Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last Best Hope for Conversation, your podcast all about Babylon 5. Joining me is my good friend Lou.
Good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone.
And the wonderful podcast mom, Karen.
Hello.
Hi, Mom.
We are recording on St. Patrick's Day. I am wearing my green.
Oh, it is.
Yes, and we are talking Rumors, Bargains, and Lies, originally aired May 12th, 1997, the 13th episode of the 4th season of Babylon 5. And I am looking forward to talking about this one with both of you. This is part one of a two-parter because there were things that happened in this episode. I kept going, okay, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Next week we get to that. Karen, that said, quick thoughts?
Good and bad.
Okay.
But we'll talk about it during the podcast, I guess.
Very nice. How about Lou? You?
Ditto.
Oh, interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see if we're on the same wavelength, Karen.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Except I'll say linear rocks.
Right? So good.
Yep.
Yeah, he really is. And I think I think some of his scenes are some of the best. I think because I'm required to do this, there is a blood red circle on the cold, dark ground, and the rain is falling down. The church door is thrown open. I can hear the organ song, but the congregation's gone. My city of ruins, my city of ruins. As I heard Delenn talking about her beloved city burning, I did think of the Bruce Springsteen song, City of Ruins, from his album, The Rising, partially inspired for 9/11, though this specific song, City of Ruins, he had written before, and it was about his beloved Ashbury Park. They were going through very tough economic times at the time, and he felt like that the city was going away. But of course, it became very appropriate after 9/11. There's a lot to talk about, but let's start there. Delenn is very worried that everything has gone to hell in a handbasket in Minbar. The religious caste is fighting the warrior caste. They don't talk about the worker caste, which gives me the feeling that they're stuck in the middle with you. And just that yes. So she's got to try to figure out a way to fix this. And she calls in her frenemy. And every time this guy joins us, every time I see him on the show, I just love that actor and I love that character. Let's just talk a little bit about that to start out with, that their discussion about what can they do to stop this, and them giving each other compliments after a fashion, as they say. Karen, let's start with you.
This was the good storyline for me.
Okay.
I don't know if Lou feels the same, but I feel like that was the storyline I was most invested in. I really liked the interactions between Delenn and Neroon. And when I watched it the first time, I've watched it twice. When I watched it the first time, I had not had any sleep the night before, 0.
Okay.
And I nodded off right at the end. And I had a warm feeling about Neroon. Then I watched it a second time and I went, oh, come on, really? And I did see that ending and I was saddened by it, but also I still love the interactions between the two of them. I'm not against this character to be a backstabber, to be honest. I was hoping that maybe they could get on the same page for this, because it would be in everyone's best interest for them to be on the same page, even the warrior cast. And I think he is walking a road that I think he's going to find himself being hoisted on his own petard, as it were. He's going to regret being on the wrong side of history for this. And Lanier hit it out of the park. Billy Mummy.
Yeah.
I don't know. He was amazing in this episode. Just you see his philosophical side, and then you see the side that is loyal enough to people. First of all, he's loyal enough to Delenn to hide the fact that her own caste is plotting against her in order to save her almost naivete about them. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, one of the things that I found interesting as I was rewatching this and reading, and we're going to get you to jump on in a minute, Lou, is that often we think of Lanier as a very, at times, naive character because he had spent so much time in the monastery, in the temple. But he also has this story of him saying, Delenn is naive. She believes the best in people. And I do think one of the other good signs were when she's talking about how horrible to turn against each other. I'm so honest and so happy that you guys are on my side. And as it would have been easy to be cynical and say she knows what's happening and she's making him feel guilty. No, she just honestly does believe that. Go ahead, finish, Karen, and then we're going to get you, Lou.
My last little part is that I also think Lanier, while he is devoted to Delenn and tries to shield her from things, he's also ready to put his life on the line for his entire world, for all of Minbar, because he knows it's important for what happens on this ship to make it off the ship. And I don't think he's saving everyone's life, yes, but I think his greater purpose in doing that was to make sure that whatever happened there reverberated. Yeah, I think he was the character in this episode to watch. So,
Lou?
Yeah, I echo most of Karen's thoughts. I did find this the better storyline of the two, though I'm still trying to reconcile that my initial impressions of the Minbari as being a more elevated, a morally advanced race seems to have come crashing down in this episode, that they're really no better than humans in that respect. The premise of this storyline just leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, and maybe that's just my own early preconceptions being dashed, that the Minbari are just as messed up as we are. Their dynamics might be a bit different, but their personal interplay seems to be no different than that of humans. So whether that's a good or a bad thing from a dramatic point of view, I guess it's a better thing for storytelling purposes. But to me, it was saying Vulcans have no emotions, and then the next episode that they're all smiling and laughing, if that's probably the easiest way I can put it. So I was a little bummed out by just the premise of this storyline. And like Karen, I was disappointed with Noreen because I was trying to reconcile his actions at the end of the episode with everything that he said in the episode, because he seemed to truly have an understanding with Delenn about what the right thing to do was. Yet for him to be able to say all that stuff and then at the end reveal that he's not really what he represented was, again, a bit of a disappointment. So the thing that really saved it for me was the Lanier sub-storyline within that storyline. And I'm curious to see if the fact that he's lost part of his lung is going to have any sort of repercussions going forward in the series. So don't have a lot to say about this beyond what I've just said and what Karen said. So yeah, it's an okay storyline, but it's not the direction I would have liked to seen from the Minbari to be going in. So that will always knock it down a notch for me.
I get that 100%.
Yeah, and I wonder how much is this mythos, like the idea Vulcans have no emotions. The reality is they do have emotions. They just don't show them.
They've learned to suppress them.
Yeah, Minbari don't lie, but yes, they do lie, right? They're, in my mind, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Lou, but I'm inside mind, there is the myth of what this is and the belief, and then the reality as we pour into this, that as a race, they're really just as foiled and feeble and flawed as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then there's the whole thing that Minbari don't kill other Minbari. So
right.
how can you have this kind of a conflict within
Yeah.
that? I don't see how you can have a bloodless conflict.
Well, they can't.
And they were showing, I believe, like in some of the city scenes, like people were being carried away on stretchers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
they're
so
killing each other.
yeah,
they
so
are killing each other, and that is why
that's,
Delenn is so upset, and that's why Neroon is so upset at the beginning, right? Where they go, we have lost our total core being. That Minbari don't hurt Minbari, but they've warped it that, well, religious caste Minbari don't kill religious caste Minbari, but warrior castes are not truly Minbari, so it's okay to fight. So that's the reason why she's so upset, is they have lost they've lost their way. They're not following their traditions.
Yeah, and see that's a big problem for me because it's such a fundamental precept, at least we were told it's such a fundamental precept of Minbari society. For them just to tell us that they're killing each other, I think they should have showed us that, and they should have showed the reactions of the people involved and the bystanders and whatnot. I think that was something that we need to have been really shown and told because it's such a part of the DNA of their society. So that's another aspect of that I didn't particularly like about this storyline.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I could see where that comes into play. I like the fact that they project an image outwardly, and yet behind the scenes, they're not fulfilling that.
No one
brief.
knows what goes on behind closed doors.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. I see where you're coming from, though, that they were built up to be this kind of perfect, or not perfect, but better.
Elevated race.
But I dig that that's just a facade. That was a mask. And without this structure of the Great Council, everything falls apart. And to me, I feel like that's interesting. That's more interesting almost than them just being better all the time.
But from a dramatic point of view, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, but I do understand what you're saying, and it is.
But if you take something in our society that we are all have burned about, and then do a story where we're actually doing the thing that we've always abhorred, you have to explore the impact of that on people instead of standing there and say, "Oh, that's terrible." The two don't equate, right?
Let me give you a real world example. Racism is abolished in our society, and yet it's pervasive. And it's hard for me to point to something that turned so many people into outwardly racist people in our society. And America likes to think they're better than other societies. And behind the scenes, we're not any better. I get that saying. It's frustrating for me in real life. I feel I can identify with that. And like I said, I feel like it's more interesting, but it is sad that they're not that elevated race.
But maybe if I'll be more specific with something that I think would be very difficult for anybody to reconcile. One of the big bugaboos that there is in today's society is exploitation of children in whatever form you take. Like if it's pornography, or even like in horror movies or whatever, you don't generally cross the line in showing a child being killed in whatever genre that you want to talk. But I pick out horror especially because if there was any genre that would do that, it would be horror. And even in horror, you cross the line when you start showing children being tortured or killed or whatever. Yeah. And I think that my perception of the Minbari is that for them to start killing each other would be equivalent to something like that. And that the reaction of that should be much stronger than, oh, we're killing each other, which is the way that they came off in this episode. So that's the point I'm trying to make. I think I know the focus is on the political machinations that are going on here and the power plays, but when you set up something as fundamental as we don't kill each other and just sweep it under the rug as, oh, I guess we
Yeah.
do now. That's
Mhm.
the failing of the storyline to me. So
Yeah, they should be more upset because not only are they killing each other, but it's a fundamental breakdown in their society. And they should
yeah,
be upset about that too.
yeah,
And I think that is a fair. The thing is, it either works or it doesn't, or it slightly works and it doesn't.
hmm
And from my perspective, I did understand the idea of just seeing how upset she was. I didn't need to see the actual issue of it happening, but I also understand how it might, that is something you needed to see,
well,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
seeing it, Delenn being upset is one thing, but there's
yeah.
everybody in that storyline is a Minbari. They should all be upset, not just her. That's the point
hmm
I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. I do think some of the best things on this podcast, this episode, was Delenn and Neroon talking to each other.
Yeah.
At first there, he's guarded, and then he actually sits down and says, okay, but that genie's out of the bottle. How are we going to put it out back in there? And their discussion back and forth, I thought was really well done. And as he seems to appreciate her and he's honest with her, I remember being shocked by the betrayal.
Yeah.
And this
Mhm.
is not going to be fair. So please take this with the spirit it's given. But I remember when Burt Reynolds and Lonnie Anderson got divorced, somebody made the joke, I didn't think they were that good enough actors to be that happy that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love Burt Reynolds, and the last actor, that one of the last films he did is a really flawed but interesting film. Burt Reynolds basically playing himself. If you haven't seen it, it's worth it. You're like, I didn't think Deroon was that good of an actor because he did seem sincere.
Yep.
He did seem, no, I agree that
Mhm.
there's nothing good about us winning. If we win, ultimately, so I'd love y'all's thoughts on that. I also like the idea that Delenn says, look, the only reason Valen knew how to produce the future is it was Jeffrey Sinclair. So he had seen it and gone to the past. Anything that's happened after he left, he doesn't know. So I thought that was really interesting discussions. And then I also would like to talk a little bit more. We've touched on it. The little mealy mouth members of the religious cast going, oh, we're going to lose. Okay, we're going to become martyrs. So, Lou, anything we haven't discussed about this, let's go ahead and discuss that kind of a little bit deeper.
Yeah, the point that Delenn brought up about Sinclair's not knowing the future after the events that have played out previously was a good one. It was a nice callback to the other things. The guest stars that were playing like the sort of the religious cast member Minbari. I thought that they were pretty good. The one guy, I don't know who was who, but he had I think it was probably Chad. He's either Guy Senior or Chard Haywood, religious one and religious two. That's in like thing me and thing
Right.
thing one and thing two. But I thought the one actor had a really good way of with his eyes. He was always really nervously darting around, looking sideways at people all the time, like he doesn't really want to look at them face to face, kind of thing. I thought the physicality of that particular actor was really well played, and it does show how leaders, if they come across as closed off and having secrets, which obviously both Sheridan and Delenn do have, it can set off seeds of mistrust and doubt about the leader's capabilities of making the correct decisions. And it's funny that we see that play out in the dynamics of American politics with people constantly questioning Biden's capabilities as a president because of his age and his mental acuity. And this kind of, for me, struck us the same sort of chord that we see with Delenn and her followers and the religious cast. I thought that was fairly prescient. And something that we see from constantly is all seems to come down to communication, I think, and the ability of a leader to read his people. And sometimes leaders get too caught up in their own issues or
BS.
their problems. There could be BS or it could be actual real world problems that they forget
Yeah.
that the people that they're leading need to be reassured
Right.
on a regular basis as well. It's difficult. Being a leader is very difficult. You're almost required to have godlike omniscient viewpoint to be able to see everybody, but you can only do so much. And that's why characters like Lanier, like a good right-hand man, are vital. And I think you could ask for a better right-hand guy than Lanier. So I did like the subtext of what was going on with the religious caste. It would have been nice to have seen the same thing being portrayed on the military side, but I understand you can only do so much. And in a particular episode, it would take a lot more screen time to be that subtle, but it would just be more realistic. But instead of painting all the military guys as, yeah, we want to fight, even calling them just the military itself makes for a nice label, fake news or whatever. But I would like to think that's painting with a broad strokes, and that within the military there would be people too that would say this is not right, what's going on with us. So that's probably way more than you wanted to hear about
No.
of the other players in that. In general, I thought the storyline, the Minbari storyline, I thought was well acted and directed and staged and whatnot. So
yeah, I want to get you to jump in, Karen, but yeah, I agree. I don't agree with the religious cast, but I do see their point of, first off, they should trust Delenn, but they don't. So if they don't trust Delenn, then, okay, what do we have to do? We have to, one even says, I even welcome the great sleep, because the idea of better than living with the shame of us being dominated by the warrior caste. And I love the idea that we see a little bit of it, not as much, but that warrior caste guy attacks Neroon, right?
mhm.
And so now, was this part of the plot? Was he actually upset with him? Or is this a setup for the reveal that the betrayal we see at the end?
Mhm.
Which, by the way, I think of Firefly, your inevitable betrayal. I did
Yeah.
not see this coming.
Yeah.
I was buying into what was going on.
Yeah.
All right. So, Karen, your thoughts on this?
Are they dinosaurs though?
Exactly. There we go.
R.I.P.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah, I agree. I think the milk toasty thing 1 and thing 2 were very interesting characters for being like side characters that I don't need to see again. But I think it's teaching a lesson a little bit to not jump to conclusions. They heard a part of the conversation, and that was it. They were ready to jump into action, and they don't trust her anymore, which I think that's the bigger story, is that she is not trusted by her own caste. These are supposed to be the representatives of her caste, and they don't trust her. So I'm assuming that trickles down on her side in the religious side of things. And part of that, I think, is because she was a big part in dissolving the Grey Council. And I feel like that's the insurance that they kept in their mind, that they were always going to be balanced in their society, that there was this governing body that always made sure that they got their due and they weren't encroached upon by these other 2 castes. And to see that this one little action that she took, and it was justified because the warrior caste had more people on the council. It wasn't serving the purpose it was meant to. And being there and having that as the authority wasn't working anymore. So she sees it from one point of view. And like you said, Lou, she's not telling them everything. She's not saying it wasn't working. We need to find a new way to do things. And we'll still get that, but we might have a period of not knowing what's going to happen. You'll just have to live with it. But she's not communicating any of that to them.
Mhm.
She's doing everything behind closed doors. And rightly so, suspect her of doing something bad because they feel like dissolving the Great Council was bad. I think that's the bigger plot point here. And I agree with you that they're interesting in that way. But the bigger plot point is, why don't they trust her anymore? And what's going to come of that? And obviously, Neroon doesn't trust her, because even after all the buildup they had, he still wants to rule, to undercut. He has no respect for her at all. And I feel like everything he said was lies. I don't think everything he said was a lie, but it doesn't ring true anymore after that ending there. There's so many dimensions to that story, and I feel like the bigger picture is going to come into focus soon, where in this episode we saw a very small microcosm of it. And I think it reverberates down to the very lowest people on the rung of each cast, that they all have that feeling. Although I feel like Neroon's a rogue agent in this case. I don't feel like the Warrior cast is as concerned, because they feel like they can hold their own, and they're going to follow Neroon. And if he's in talks with Delenn, then they'll trust him to do what's right for them. And Delenn doesn't have that comfort on her side. That made me sad. And I hope that Lanier is going to be her check and balance, because he sees more than she does. And the fact that he made sure to tell her that the Warrior cast wasn't involved. So he's keeping that belief that she's doing something successful with them, but also not revealing how she's being backstabbed by her own cast. So there's a lot of important things happening, some things on the chessboard moving and all that. But yeah, some very interesting stuff here.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that we've got this back and forth, the idea, and I love your kind of the mealy mouth is when this kind of, and I think the idea that, and we've talked about this before, but the idea that Lanier says Delenn is better than us. She walks in a better place than us. And therefore we need to believe her and trust her. I also, one of the things that I enjoyed a lot, because this does show, in my mind, a flaw of Delenn is her. Neroon says, you should have thought of this before you broke the council. And she's, let's just not dwell on that. Okay. Enough of that. And I'm always amused by people that you bring up, you called me a piece of trash. Okay. Let's just get past that. Okay.
There's no getting past it. You have to deal with it, or yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I forgot, I'm sorry. By not trusting Delenn, they're also discounting their belief in Dukat.
Yes.
So there's that as well. And she brings up a good point that Dukat, as Sinclair, didn't know what was going to happen now. And I feel like that's going to be her undoing.
Not
that
Dukat,
she doesn't.
Valen. Yeah. And also, by the way, Dukat was one of their great people. Like he was
Todd.
Yeah, he was like a Lincoln or a Washington, you know, so that there is that, because she's the heir.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Both. Dukat being more of a, I'm sorry, I got those mixed up. Dukat being more of a human kind of figure, but a father figure kind of thing. And and Valen. Sorry.
We're going to move back to the station, but any last thoughts about this Minbari storyline? And I saw when I was looking at Lurker's Guide, and I can't remember if someone brings this up in our feedback, but as this was published on Lurker's Guide, they said, is this truly a betrayal? Is he setting up? Is this part of him and Delenn's game? I just want to know, have you guys thought of that? Or were you guys, because I remember watching this the first time and I had not remembered this. I was shocked in a way, like, oh shit, I should have remembered that. But I went, damn it, he's the good guy. Why is
Yeah.
he turning on this?
The good guy in this.
Yeah, and this, do you guys have any speculation perhaps on what's going to happen? By the way, next week we get the rest of the story. We're
Okay, so we don't
yeah,
have to
no,
wait.
this in fact, I think if we weren't just doing one episode at a time, this would have been let's do this both together. Yeah, let's start with you, Karen, then you, Lou. Any
Yeah,
thoughts on
as to
speculation?
I didn't have any doubts about what he was doing because he has shown himself to be duplicitous
Yeah.
in the past. I thought that he's just double crossing her.
Okay.
Now you've put something in my head, though.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in mind.
Okay. Lou?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. I'm pretty sure that he's not conning the military because the messaging that he gave was pretty specific about their weaknesses and whatnot. And two, that's a level of writing that I don't think the show has shown itself to be interested in doing. I think I would be very pleasantly surprised if that was had to play out that way. But
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that Neroon doing what he's doing, and it's not like a double ploy. Yeah. And just to finish off on the story thread, I had two other points I wanted to make.
Please.
One is this had a very Julius Caesar Brutus vibe to it.
Yeah.
And as well as intentioned as Lanier's actions towards Delenn are, it's never a good thing to withhold information from your leader. And because if he would tell her in confidence that what had really happened, she could modify her behavior going forward. But because she doesn't know how unrestful her people are, she's not going to modify her behavior, and the things that she's been doing that have caused this problem to happen in the first place are going to persist. So while Lanier is hoping that his gesture has made a impact on the religious caste, how long is that going to last? And before they start doubting her again. So it's no matter how well intentioned sometimes our deeds are, the consequences can be disastrous. We'll have to see if that plays out.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. I love it. All right. So it sounds like neither one of you were big fans of the other storyline. So basically, John is manipulating the League of the Aligned Worlds to do what he wants to do by basically saying, don't throw me in that briar patch. A very outdated reference, but hopefully people get it. And I actually loved the storyline. I remember liking it when I first saw it, and when I watched it again, I thought it was hilarious because it feels for once John is driving the bus, that he is being able, and because as much people are, he's getting people to do the right thing. And the only reason most people, what's in it for me, right? That's as a manager, I always have to think as an employee, all employees, no matter how dedicated they are, in the back of my mind, what's in it for me? Why am I doing this? And by manipulating the League of the Assigned Worlds to get them to do this, what's good for them, he ultimately is helping them by manipulation. And I think it was fun watching him not telling the command staff what's going on and doing all of this. And you will not know this, but they are setting up the Zooty Zoot Suit gets paid off in season 5 in a great way. Lou, okay. Tell me your thoughts on this storyline.
One of the cardinal sins of storytelling is to have the audience way ahead of the story. And the problem with this storyline is pretty well from the first or maybe second scene with John carrying out his plan, you knew where the storyline was going to go. So you were sitting there every time these scenes came up, you're going, okay, we get it. We get what you're doing, John. Let's get to something interesting because we know where this is going to play out to. So for the most part, I was bored with the storyline because I knew what the ending was. And the other thing that doesn't play very well for me is how overt John was with his, I don't know what you want to call it, his glee, I guess you could say, of carrying out his plan, and everybody else around him being totally oblivious and stupid to not understanding what he was trying to do, because we've seen these people are smart people. and they should be up on what he's trying to do. Yeah, you could fool one or two people, but you can't fool everybody all of the time. And somebody like Susan, who knows him well, should have figured out what he was trying to do. So I'm not a fan of storylines having to work by making characters act stupidly or being stupid. And I thought that was also another problem here. So I just in today's TV world where the writing is so much more sophisticated and the character interactions are more nuanced, I just thought everything was played over the top just too much in every scene. And not just John, but all the alien delegates interacting with each other and fretting about what was going on. And Londo, who's a master tactician, he should have figured out what was going on as well. So it was just like, I'm not a fan of storylines relying on everybody being stupid. And that's how this came across to me. And plus, I knew where it was going 5 minutes into the episode. So for the rest of the episode, I was pretty well bored with the storyline. The end.
All right.
Yeah,
So Karen, please jump in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jesse, but I completely disagree. I agree with Lou that withholding the information and us realizing what he was doing right away, it made his staff look dumb, especially Susan, like he said. And he has also told Londo that he's doing it to get the non-aligned worlds on board. So why didn't he just come out and say, yeah, I need to do this for the non-aligned worlds to get on board? He didn't. He just told him you have to do this, and he trusted him to do it, which it's hard to trust Londo anymore. He should have explained things a little better to him instead of just saying, yeah, don't ask me why, but do this. And I have to say, this is the first time, and I love you, Bruce, so much. The first time his acting made me get all cringy. Especially that first scene with him just laughing. It was so forced looking to me. I'm sure I'm disillusioning you, Jesse, but storyline disappointed me. And it's not that it's not setting up something good. I get that. It's
the execution.
It's serving a purpose, but yeah, I feel like it was lazy. Exactly. Lazy and heavy-handed at the same time, which is difficult to do. We got it. Lou said, I knew right away what he was going to do. He was going to trick them into joining. Even if I didn't know exactly how he was going to do it, I realized when he was telling people, go and do this so it looks like something's happening. It's hard not to know. And I feel like even Marcus would know, even though he's off Babylon 5 and not seeing the other parts of it. He would know, Susan would know, Franklin would know. If we don't know if Franklin knows or not, because he just comes in and delivers his line and leaves. And like Zach would know, everybody would know, would have a feeling that's what he's doing. And they're acting like what he's doing is so weird. So to me, yeah, the storyline was just non-logical to me. And like I said, cringy. I will say there's one thing I love about it, and it has nothing to do with Babylon 5, but they mention the Winchester Mystery House. Londo does. It was a big part of my childhood. We went there on field trips several times, and it's a beautiful house. It's in San Jose, California. Mrs. Winchester was crazy, but that house was done in such a lovely way, even as crazy as it is with her she built walls and staircases so that ghosts would be confused by the house. That was her thought process behind it. It would have been nice for them to maybe bring up that she was trying to subvert whatever it was coming to get her, because it would actually mirror that storyline a little bit. They didn't. I understand. It would have been very cumbersome to do that, but man, that house is amazing. And for them to actually acknowledge it exists in their world is awesome, I think.
I loved the country and western comment, because I always love when Londo is talking about the hokey pokey or just the things about a human Earth culture. And as I said, there was a payoff to the
Judy Zoot.
Yeah, Zooty Zoot. Yes.
That was also cringy.
Rebo and Zooty.
Yeah, when
So
he
yes.
walks out and he goes zooty zoot zoot, and I'm
Yes.
like, oh, cringy, so
Uh,
cringy.
very nice.
I was hoping he was going to say Abbott and Costello or something, but
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
that's what I
I'm
was waiting
assuming
for.
that's the comedy
Yeah,
team feeling.
the equivalent of
Yeah.
Yeah,
in that time. Yeah.
it's a modern version of a comedian, a comedy duo like Martin
Yeah.
and Lewis or Abbott and Costello or all right. No, I believe if I go back to when I was watching this, I did not know what he was doing till about halfway through. So maybe that's why it worked for me a little bit more than you. But I think it's fair. I think everything you guys said is absolutely a fair criticism of the story. I did read that I thought it was in the Lurker's Guide that he had Claudia Christensen as Susan reading a teleprompter instead of her delivering the lines as an actress. He wanted to show that she's reading so that this would feel different than her doing that. So we do get a little bit of voice of resistance. I think they answer a few of our questions about who's listening and how they're having to, on Earth ships, do this undercover. I picture with a little transistor radio in your bed with your covers because your parents don't want you listening to the radio after bedtime.
For me, it was watching SCTV. I had to do that behind my mom's back.
Mm-hmm. And I just was amused that Susan, no, I can't plan a story. We've started too much. All I want you to do is nothing happened.
Which is
but
true.
But nothing did happen. Exactly. So I thought it was fun. All right. Any final thoughts? Anything else we need to cover in the episode? Okay.
So.
Nope.
All right. Karen, you got a rating for us?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little higher than I would like, maybe, because I think it's setting up some important stuff. I'm going to give it 8 Winchester Mystery House.
By the way, I would love to tour that. I've never.
You should go.
Yeah, that would
if
be
you're
a lot
ever
of fun.
Anywhere near California, you should go.
Okay.
Because it is something to be remembered.
Okay. Good. All right. Lou.
I'll give it 7 Danger, Will Robbins.
Nice.
That's very good.
That is really good. I like that. I am going to go with Karen. I'm going to go 8 out of 10. Let's see. After a fashion ratings.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to echo something for the listeners out there.
Yeah.
If you're ever in California near the Bay Area, I urge you to go to the Winchester Mystery House. It's nothing that is like overtly advertised as a destination, but I would go. So sorry. I just
No, I'm glad. Thank you. Hey, Winchester House, if you want to sponsor us, we're available.
There you go.
I thought it was a supernatural reference. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a real house. It's the woman is the wife of the actual gunmaker, Winchester.
Oh, okay.
And she was afraid that the ghosts of all the people that were killed by Winchester rifles would come and get her. That was her whole thing.
Could be a supernatural reference. I don't even think the show had started back then.
No, but yeah, it's a super interesting thing to see all that.
Yeah, and the thought is that all the people who died on the gun that her husband invented.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is a way to keep
they were going to come. They were going to come and get her.
Totally unaware of this
because she was incredibly guilty about what her husband had invented.
Okay. We did get some feedback. Do you want to?
Yeah.
We got 2. You want to go through them, Karen?
Sure. Texas has an early feedback at the beginning of the week. So it was before we watched it, which means I didn't get a chance to read it until now. Texas says, so what do people do when they make assumptions? If Sheridan's in the picture, you do exactly what he wants you to and are never the wiser. And Franklin knew. Either Sheridan filled him in or he figured it out, but he was enjoying himself way too much when he came to talk to the ambassadors. So Sheridan has learned something about trying to do the right thing. Sometimes you have to be a little sneaky about it. He went about it like he was keeping this big secret, but the only thing he was hiding was the fact that he wasn't actually hiding anything. On the other side, we have another of people seeing part of the picture and coming to the wrong conclusion, but instead of being manufactured to serve a goal, this one is accidental and almost leads a bunch of misguided zealots to disaster. Would have had Lanier not intervene. So Delenn has seemingly made some sort of deal with Neroon, but it doesn't seem he intends to follow through on it. What is his game? To find out, will you follow me into fire? Will you? Interesting. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off. Until then.
Yay.
Nice feedback.
It was. I think that's interesting. And I do like the idea. I had read this, and when I rewatched the episode, Franklin's, we need as much blood as you can get us. He did seem to have that idea of, I know what's happening, and was enjoying it a little too much. Yeah. Then Nathan said, Karen.
Yeah. So Nathan says, hey guys, I wasn't writing because I didn't care. And he doesn't care about the show, these episodes that we're talking about. It's not that he doesn't care about us. I hope, at least. Remember how I said in the first season that I consistently found Garibaldi subplots and episodes to consistently be the most boring ones? You can imagine how glad I was that he was in the forefront so much in season 4 yet again. And no, it's not with hindsight. He never clicked for me from the beginning, and I felt like JMS didn't write for him now either. We agree, halvesies on that, Nathan? That he has underwritten Garibaldi? We did like him as a character. And while watching these past 2 episodes, I kept thinking, and you've cut Shadow War short for that? As for the current episode, only the Minbari storyline is interesting for me, even though it's pretty basic. And it does a repeat of self-sacrifice plot from the first episode of season 2 when Sheridan arrives. Another part was Sheridan tricking ex-League of Non-Aligned Worlds. It's a string of funny bits, and I like it for that, but I don't like it as an implementation of the plot. JMS in general does very basic stuff pretty often, and this time the play is incredibly obvious, played out in a shallow way over just 1 episode, which is why it never worked for me. I felt like it was undercooked to say the least. Later, I've read some sci-fi from the guys who are fascinated with battles and maneuvering and think about more elaborate stunts and feints, and it made the writing of this episode seem like even more of a throwaway on repeat viewings. With regards, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan. Nathan is more in line with you guys, so that's good.
Yeah, I think he's more negative than we are, but I think it's because he sees the flaws in something that could be really great.
Yeah, so good. I'm glad he shared that. Lou, do we get any feedback on the YouTube channel?
We had a couple of comments for conflicts of interest, which was the Garibaldi episode. Nathan writes, Garibaldi recognized telepaths because of how they reacted without the need to talk to each other, and reacted to Garibaldi's action by just looking at him and Liz. It was a deduction he made based on their behavior, nothing more. That's a fair read. I have no quibbles with that. Thank you, Nathan. Stuart says, we saw 2 Zathri together in the beginning of War Without End, where Zathras says to his doppelganger that he knows what to do because Drall told him. Okay.
I don't remember that, but
I don't either. I'll take your word for it, Stuart.
Yeah.
And then Simon writes, so Lise, what was it that attracted you to billionaire William Edgars? Credits to Caroline Ahern as Mrs. Merton. I'm not sure I'm getting the reference there. Sorry. As for the Ducks, I think that this is the one where JMS decided to lean hard, or rather die hard, into Jerry Dole looking as a little like a budget Bruce Willis. Nice.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's cool. Good. All right. If someone wants to give us feedback, how can they, Lou?
They can do it on our YouTube channel, Lou's Reviews, where we post the Babylon 5 podcasts. And as for myself, I also have other podcasts on there, the Writers Podcast, the Stephen King Podcast, our JKL Media Podcast, where we've covered such things as Midnight Mass, Devs, Station 11, The English, Identity Crisis, Dark Matter, Springsteen, Western Stars, The Tragically Hip. That's a Canadian band for you out there that not familiar with them. The 12 Monkeys TV series, and the Watchmen TV series, and our last one was the We Are the World music special that's playing on Netflix right now. And on Twitter, you can find me at Lou W. Sytsma, Sytsma.
Super. And Karen?
I'm at Aleveria, Aleveria, on the various social medias, and my blog is alliestuff.com. And the landing page there has a bunch of links that you might find interesting. I've also just tweeted about the Winchester Mystery House. I am the worst when it comes to promotion. Not getting paid at all by this. And also, Lou didn't mention, but we'll be talking about Barbie in our next JKL Media episode, which might be surprising, but you might also find something interesting.
Absolutely. By the way, how are you doing on your reading goal in 2024?
I'm still behind, and I think it's because I'm listening to audiobooks more instead of reading. So I need to get out of that habit. I read way faster than an audiobook happens.
Do you not go in there? Can you not in Goodreads mark it as
Oh, yeah.
read it? Okay.
I can. It just takes longer.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay, good.
I'm not reading as many things fast enough. I just joined a Patreon group that is run by one of my favorite narrators, and that's becoming a joy for me. The community there is great. And he does these talks with us like every week. He'll do a Zoom conference with us. And so it's weird to hear him talking in real life and then hear him narrating an audiobook, which is totally different. It's these two different people, which is cool. But yeah, audiobooks are great, but yeah, it's taking me longer. So I'm going to go back to reading a little bit more.
Good. I am doing pretty well. I am at 32 books so far of my goal for 100. And I just finished a couple weeks ago. I don't know if I mentioned this, The Sufferer's Guide to the Antarctic by Yi-Shun Lei. She is a former Set Lusting Bruce guest. It is a book set where this is during the early 20th century where suffrage was trying to get women the right to vote, and the main character is the only woman on a expedition to the Antarctic. And I thought it ended up being a really excellent book. So guys, check that out. Yes. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. I continue to talk music on Set Lusting Bruce and on Perfectly Good Podcast. And very excited that they just announced that Doctor Who, New Who, will be coming out in May. They gave us the official date, so Charles and I will be covering all the new episodes.
And it will be streamed on Disney Plus, right?
It will be, yes. And so it's going to be a lot of fun.
By the way, I've read 40 books, if I count all the audiobooks. It sounds like I'm doing good, but I'm 33 books behind schedule. Yeah. So I really do need to catch up.
Yeah, you have a very long. I'm happy that I'm going to try to do 100. I did 100 last year and it was tough. So I'm trying to do 100 this year. The only thing that helps me is sometimes Amazon Kindles counts novellas as books.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit easier.
I have to do the opposite because I read compilations of a series. Yeah. So I have to go in and mark each book instead of choosing I have to unchoose.
Right.
The longer book, but yeah.
Very nice. Hey, send us feedback on Barbie. I would love people send us an email to jklb5podcast@gmail.com if you have thoughts on Barbie, and that would be fun for us to share. We normally do not get feedback on our one-offs, so that would be great. Karen, Lou, as always, is a blast. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day. Thanks. And we will be back next week. So for now, everyone be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yay.
And see.